about it. I'm not. This is not any sort of Karate Kid thing. I've never met him before. I wish I could take credit for this, but
Mr. Miyagi, that's
Yeah.
you. I teach you how to cast the burn spell. Flame Rift always.
yeah.
Just
Dude.
cast it whenever. Here's a ponder from Dan.
Or as I refer to it, 2 deal 8.
Yeah, yeah.
The best deal in Magic.
2 mana, deal 8.
How can you beat that rate?
It's really tough, actually. It's really tough. Dan gonna go pondering here. Makes you wonder if he knows what he's up against.
Well, if this is the same player that beat Matt Costa
It
last
is.
round, Matt and Dan are good friends, and they're talking in between rounds, so I'm sure Dan knows what he's up against.
It is not a great matchup, so we'll see if Dan is able to cobble some things together. He will keep with the ponder. There's a Gataxian Probe, so if he didn't know, now he does. Got Lotus Petal, City of Traders, Grindstone, Red Elemental Blast, and Ancient Tomb. Those are the cards.
Not a great hand for Ian, but
No.
not a disaster either.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a pretty poor hand on Mulligan. The thing is that the cards that he can draw are so powerful. He can, of course, find Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon. Can also find, Painter's Servant as well. So he's already got a blast.
There's not a lot going on, but there's a lot of easy ways for this hand to improve significantly.
Yep. Does not take much, as Carle will draw a card. Lotus Petal going to come in. See if it's time for me a Grindstone here. Again, the white in this deck for Enlightened Tutor and a couple of other white cards to search for with the Tutor engine as well. Rest in peace in the sideboard, among others. Arid Mesa will be sacrificed.
And I wonder here if Ian found something of significance. He's playing the pedal, he's cracking his fetch land.
Yeah. There's a mountain. This is 3 mana. Boy, oh boy. All right, Imperial Painter is, it's not as troublesome as things could have been between a Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon for Dan, but that searches for Painter Servant, so that's relevant.
Also can search for Magus of the Moon, depending on what direction Ian wants to take the game.
So let's see if Dan allows us to resolve. Looks like he's probably looking at a Force of Will here. Of course, the question is, do you Force of Will this, or do you Force of Will comes after it?
A lot of this has to do with whether or not Dan has Daze in his hand. This is a really good spot to force if Dan has Daze backup, because Ian's probably going to fight over this with the Red Blast in his hand.
He will sacrifice the pedal, and there is the blast. You saw Jordan cast Force of Will, removing Delver of Secrets. So that's going to be good to go. Painter or Magus? Or maybe some of the other bullets here. Here's a card like Phyrexian Revoker, Jaya Ballard, Welder as well. A lot of options.
I imagine it has to be one of the 2 cards that can win the game here, that being Painter Servant or effectively Magus of the Moon. Although Magus, a lot less reliable against a deck with Lightning Bolt in it. Against a deck like Bug Delver, you just go get it.
Yep.
It's good to go. But against Rug Delver and Blue-White Red Delver, it's a little bit riskier.
And Jordan going to quickly sacrifice a polluted Delta. You have to imagine a Tundra is going to come up. It might be Stoneforge Mystic time.
So I like getting the Painter Servant here. Next turn, Ian can probably resolve his Grindstone and just pass and wait for a spot where he has set up to push through a Lightning Bolt or force Dan to keep up mana for the entire game. A lot of this has to do with what Dan does. If he gets Stoneforge Mystic and then that finds Jite, Ian's on some pressure to win a little bit quickly. He's got a couple hits he can take, but he can't wait forever.
And Dan just going to pass the turn back after sacrificing very quickly. So Ian drew his card for the turn, and I agree with you. Depending on what Ian draws for the turn, I could just very simply see a Grindstone pass the turn back with mana available. There's a City of Traders.
Yeah, again, no rush. As long as Dan's not pressuring Ian, Ian can wait to sculpt a better hand.
Get in there, Imperial
And
Recruiter.
in the meantime, get in some licks.
Yes. Show him who you are. Will it be Painter? Will it be Grindstone? Will it be something else? It is a Painter. See if Jordan's okay with this. The follow-up now is a grindstone. Jordan's going to take a look at it. And Ian named green with the painter servant.
Interesting.
Well, one thing it does is it shuts off Force of Will, removing a blue card.
Aha.
And if painter servant names blue, everything's blue. Now, one thing about Jordan's deck is he does have a lot of spot removal for the painter servant. Swords and bolts. And here's the swords. Is that a Simian Spirit Guide? It is not.
Well, Dan can also do this in response to the grindstone.
This is true. So Ian with just one card in hand.
But again, that one card can easily be a kill.
Yeah. Stoneforge Mystic, I'm gonna go searching. See what we find. It's gonna be news LSGT. Jordan gonna sacrifice the Scalding Tarn. He'll go one lower, see which dual land he wants to get. It'll be a Tundra, and this is a Delver. And the door is wide open here, I believe. And Ian untapped very quickly. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Wah, wah.
Dan, you better have, nope. Better have Force of Will, my friend.
Even Daze at least gives him a reprieve.
Yeah, something. Yeah, he has none of the above. And Ian Carle's going to win game number 1 here over Dan Jordan. Red-White Painter up a game over Blue-Red Delver. It does not take much to get the job done.
No, from a very low base. And like we said, Ian mulligans, he gets Gataxian probed. His hand looks like it has nothing.
Yep.
And it kind of does. But there's a lot of paths that hand can go down to have a kill or a lock. And Ian found it pretty quickly, even through Force of Will.
Yeah. Red-White Painter up 1 over Blue-Red Delver. We'll look at Dan Jordan's sideboard first, which you have in front of you.
4 Metally Mage, 2 Rest in Peace. A Red Blast, a Pyroblast, a Sword of Peace and Famine, a Source of Plowshare, a Wear Tear, 2 Grimlock Mancers, 2 Flusterstorms. Not a lot going on in the sideboard in this matchup. The Wear Tear can come in, the Source of Plowshares can as well. Other than that, there's not a lot going on. The Pyroblast and the Red Blast he could bring in, but most careful Red-White Painter decks do not name blue post-board. Out of the respect for the possibility of Red Blast or Pyroblast, he can bring in Rest in Peace that shuts off the Goblin Welder shenanigans, but that's more of a tertiary plan for this deck than anything Ian's really relying on. So not a lot in the sideboard to upgrade the deck. The Wear Tear and the Source of Plowshares are the only things that really stand out. Maybe Meddling Mage as well.
1s and 2s is what we're going to take a look at here on Ian's side. He's got 1 Rest in Peace and Ensnaring Bridge, a Ratchet Bomb, 2 Tormod's Crypts, a Pirate Spellbomb, and Aethersworn Canonist, a Thorn of Amethyst, a Trinisphere, a Manic Vandal, a Koth of the Hammer, Red Elemental Blast, and 3 copies of Firebolt. Now, last round, when he played against Matt Costa playing Rug Delver, we saw Ian boarded at least 1 Firebolt, because it took down a Delver. Now, the interesting thing about Firebolt in that matchup is outside of killing Delver's secrets, it's not really all that great. Not going to kill him in Mongoose, obviously, and chances are it won't kill a Tarmogoyf. In this matchup, however, Firebolt looks to be very good, because not only will it kill Delver, it will kill Stoneforge, too.
And if Dan sideboards into either Grimlomancer or Meddling Mage, answers those cards as well. So definitely well-suited for this matchup.
I expect to see Firebolt come in. I expect to see Ratchet Bomb come in. You could make an argument for Ensnaring Bridge. He's got 2 in his main. Does he want a 3rd one? Maybe yes, maybe no. Rest in Peace is good against some Delver decks, Bug and Rug, but not this one.
No, it does not rely on its graveyard whatsoever. So is this an Enlightened Tutor build, or are we just keeping it real with this?
We got an Enlightened Tutor build. There are 2.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Sure. Are we keeping it real with
There's
all these one-ups?
there's a lot of one-ups over here. I just want to confirm.
Yep. The Trinisphere feels like a little bit slow to me, more for combo matchups. I mean, if you can get a Trinisphere and play against Blue-Red or Delver, it's quite good, but it does feel a touch slow. The Pirate Spellbomb could be a little bit redundant like the Firebolt that we did see, and you can tutor that up if you need to. You know, there's a lot of options here for Ian, so we'll see how he wants to sideboard, but more importantly, you know, these things that he can bring in, they're minor is in regards to, in the grand scheme of things, what he needs in the matchup, which is Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, or the combo, which he put together in game 1.
It still feels like a significant upgrade to me because Ian can spend all the time sculpting up the perfect hand or making sure he has overlap on pieces or can go off over the top of certain things as long as he's not under pressure. When Dan's attacking him with Insectile Aberrations or resolving Stoneforge Mystics, Ian has to speed up. So having access to a lot of shocks, like you said, it seems innocuous. They're not the most powerful cards. They're not super splashy. But anything that allows Ian to defend himself is going to give him the time to build up hands where he doesn't have to worry about losing to a single piece of resistance.
Yeah. And while we do wait for these players to finish sideboarding, we will talk about SCG Game Night, of course, coming in September, beginning every Wednesday.
There's going to be events held at your local store. We're going to be sending out these kits of 2 pins and 8 foil tokens each week. We're going to have a new set of pins and foils each month. You can see that we have this little bugger here coming out in September. Every Wednesday night, stores, you can run this however you want to, sanctioned, unsanctioned, whatever format. StarCityGames.com/game night gives you all the information. # game night for any social media posts. And again, make sure that you register if you're a store. If you're a player, bug your store owner about this. We want to make sure we have as many stores as possible online come September when this gets up and running.
And of course, it is worldwide now, so sign up now at StarCityGames.com/game night. Sign up any questions you may have, game night at StarCityGames.com for your emails. We'd love to get you set up with this, and I think it's going to be a big hit among all of the stores.
Yeah, this is a great local grassroots organized play, is the baseline for Magic, kind of both casually and competitively. So ways to get people into the store that in a not a very cutthroat environment where people are kind of just playing for fun and some foil tokens and that sort of stuff is a good way to get more players into your store and attract a wider player base. So we hope that this can be a successful program for stores and players of different ability levels.
I still think this is a great matchup for Ian. Feels like his match to lose almost.
Yes, definitely. Now, he can still get these disconnected draws, and we saw definitely that occur with our Dragon Stompy player that we had on camera earlier. So these things can happen, but the red-white painter build is a little bit more redundant than that. And he has so many routes to victory here. The matches where Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon are on, they're way different for this deck. Magus of the Moon's a little less reliable. Dan can top deck a Lightning Bolt and break out of it. Blood Moon is good to go.
Yep. That comes in, it gets ugly. And again, last summer, I said this when I was with Shroud, last summer, that's when we had the painter deck really crop up. Win Baltimore in the hands of Jonathan Suarez. Ruben Bressler lost in the final Cincinnati to Eric Rill. But we had, about a 5-week stretch of a lot of painter decks pushing decks like Charlotte's Bug and Esper Deathblade and their greedy mana bases right out of the way.
I feel like we've had a lot of Blood Moon decks in Legacy historically, but they've all been in the Dragon Stompy vein of this deck's either beating you on turn 1 or not doing anything. It's either locking you with Trinisphere or Chalice or a Blood Moon effect, or it's not doing anything at all.
Yep.
Red-White Painter and Mono-Red Painter and decks of this ilk have the ability to win games when they aren't just winning the game outright on turn 1 with some sort of lock or Blood Moon effect. So this to me seems like a very natural evolution of a strategy that's been around for many years.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually what kind of makes it more appealing, is that it can play, kind of a plan A or plan B game.
Yeah.
And Carle going to take his first turn of the game. And Jordan with just a scalding tarn. Just play him out and pass the turn back. The tough thing here for Dan is that, the tempo draws that Delver can present are not very good against Ian's deck.
Yes, especially post-board when he has so many Firebolts and Pyrite Spellbombs to fend off the early pressure.
Yeah. Things we thought we would be saying today.
Yeah.
Firebolt and Pyrite Spellbombs.
I'm surprised the game goes long enough where flashbacking Firebolt comes up. But I suppose it does.
I imagine it can. I mean, you're also a deck that does have Ancient Tomb Insidia Trader, so
yeah, no,
it's not too tough. It's rather adorable.
It's just compelling to me that in an incredibly powerful format like Legacy, that 5 mana to flashback a shock is a thing that comes up in games.
Yeah, I think that's one could argue that's the best part. We're gonna go for our first moon effect. Oh yeah.
Try to moon you.
You better have a counter spell. Looks like Jordan has a daze.
But there are Simian Spirit Guides.
They are looming. Jordan gonna float a mana and now cast daze. Does Ian have a Simian Spirit Guide? He does. I'll pay 1. Does Jordan have a Spell Pierce? Okay. I'd be surprised if there were 2 more Simian Spirit Guides. That just means it's not Dan's match to win. That's all that means.
Dan has passed the first test.
Yep.
Now there's a lot more tests to come.
Oh, yeah.
But he's at least survived the first one.
Gonna waste on the City of Traders. Replay his Thunder, pass the turn back. Ian went for broke. Didn't hit, but that's okay.
It was a good spot.
Yeah.
He might win the game there outright. He has protection against daze at least.
The thing is if it doesn't work, it's just like, okay, we just get to keep playing Magic, and if it does work, Dan loses the game.
Yeah. Ian does not need that to resolve to be able to win.
Yeah.
Of course, if it does, that's great, but not a requirement.
Here's a Brainstorm. Ian actually looking at a Blast effect here. I think he's considering this. I don't hate this.
I don't either.
Yeah. Brainstorm is quite good.
Dan's got nothing going on, you know? This sort of holding pattern, we're just making our land drops and not really doing anything, style really favors Ian, so.
Ian with a smart play, too. While Dan's shields are down, he's going to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills. He'll get a basic mountain. 1, to play around Stifle. 2, going to get the basic to play around Wasteland. So, a heady play there.
Now Dan has to decide whether or not he's ever happy to tap out. Even if he has nothing, he has to kind of keep up the illusion that at least something could be going on.
Tundra. The follow-up. There's a Meddling Mage. Here's a Blast. Yep, get that weak stuff out of here.
That's the other thing. For all the different dimensions of attack that Ian has in this matchup, he also has just a bunch of Red Elemental Blasts and Pyroblast.
Yep. Oh, by the way.
What are you playing in Legacy? Oh, the Pyroblast Blood Moon deck.
Yeah.
Pretty rough for Delver strategies.
Well, speak of Delver, there it is. That'll resolve. You know, Ian has plenty of answers to that card.
Perhaps slightly optimistic Dan Jordan comes with the Delver already flipped.
Don't worry, this is going to be a 3-2. Not sure the contents in Dan's hand besides that Delver. He's going to play another Tundra. Let's see what this is going to be, a Meddling Mage. And that's another Blast, so that's not going to work. And pass the turn back, and another Blast. Whew, boy.
It's just one of those matchups, huh?
It really is. It really is. There's a Plateau. I think Ian's last card now is a Phyrexian Revoker. Just going to pass the turn back over to Jordan. Well, Dan's exhausted quite a bit of Ian's resources, so Stoneforge Mystic will probably search for a Batter Skull. Could search for a GT as well. Yeah, it's going to get in GT. Yep, there's a Wasteland. GT going to come into play. Ian going to kind of just hope, or excuse me, Dan's just going to kind of hope for the best.
Well, doing this means that even if he gets Blood Moon, he still theoretically can win the game.
He gets to play Magic.
Yep.
There's a Revoker. Going to prevent the GT. Jordan basically out of cards at this point. Carle was just 1. And GT was the name there with the Revoker. That bad boy's back at M15.
Yep.
I'm excited. I can't wait to name Pack Rat, and then for them to kill my Revoker and then kill me with Pack Rat.
Yeah.
It's going to be...
They'll shrivel and the other Revoker.
Yeah. I cannot wait. There's Blue to Delta. Pass the turn back.
If you want to be a mono black devotion, a creature with a text box is probably not the way to do it.
Probably not a great start. Mr. Welder.
What we got going on in that graveyard? Probably nothing.
Just, 17 blasts. That's it. Welder's good to go. I mean, Dan's out of cards. Can't really do anything about it anyway. Dan is hoping to draw Batter Skull. Ponder's not bad.
I think he would also settle for Source of Plowshares.
Looks like that's what he found.
That will do.
Yep. In case you want to where Ponder is, pretty powerful. There's the swords. Get that Revoker out of the way. Ian does get to gain some life.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Very considerate of Dan.
Fair card. In comes the Stoneforge with the GT. 2 charge counters coming. Can work away with that Welder when he deems fit. And Ian drew this 1 turn too late, oddly enough. There's Blood Moon. So now here's the big question. Can he beat what's on the table? Because Dan's spells, well, there will be no more of them.
Well, the question is, what does Ian have to get out from underneath this Jitte?
Yep.
The big one is Manic Vandal.
That is huge. That is huge.
I don't know if he's brought in Ratchet Bomb. That would be very good right now.
And Ian is at 20, so he's going to get to see quite a few cards. Dan's going to sacrifice that Delta to get a Volcanic Island, just I imagine just to get lands out of his deck, and increase the chances that he can draw Batter Skull or Lightning Bolts or whatever the few cards that he can cast are. Oh, look at Welder.
Yeah.
Red Zone.
Another shot. Another jab.
Yep. And here comes Dan now. See if he's going to pump this bad boy or not. Looks like the answer is no. Up to 4 we go.
I would want to maintain maximum flexibility, you know? No reason to pump just yet. And you may want to use that to kill a Painter Servant, or who knows what else could be in Ian's deck.
Here comes the Welder. Ian, Simian Spirit Guide.
Nice.
Yep. In the house. There we come again. And he says, I want to make sure I know exactly what this does. It does have a lot of text in it, and the text is quite relevant on Musawa Chite. It's tough to say which play is better here, because playing Simian Spirit Guide is interesting, I believe. But what Ian could actually do is if he draws Imperial Recruiter,
he gets to go right away.
Yeah, he gets to do it right away instead of kind of, the breakup here. Oh, beatdowns.
I like it.
Oh, beatdowns. Just going to pass the turn back. Jordan. He really can't cast any spells. He's got to ride the Stoneforge Mystic and Musawa Chite to victory.
Well, now I'm pumping if I'm Dan.
Full amount?
I think so, because if Ian can blow this, if you were to pump, I guess it's still not in bolt range. I would just be concerned about Ian blowing up the Jite and then you having no real way to win.
Yeah.
If you pump there, at least you have the hope of running bolts, maybe getting you out of it.
He would have dealt him 13. Ian would have went down to 4. Or Ian went down to 4. And the running bolts would be an out in this situation.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, if Manic Vandal comes rolling off the top, that's a disaster.
Not sure if it's even on Dan's radar that Ian has a way to blow up this Jite.
Yep.
Now he wants to keep some counters on there in the event that Ian draws the Steering Bridge, so he can shrink the Stoneforge Mystic, attack, and then pump.
Yep.
But he has more than enough counters to navigate that sort of situation.
To the left of the main event stage. Again, either during this round or after this round, if you believe you have made top 8, please remember
There's your recruiter.
the judge station. Thank you very much.
Oh, Dan J wants to take a look. Make sure he knows exactly what this does. This was the card. This was the scariest draw.
And for Dan, if this Manic Vandal blows up a Jite with 9 counters on it, it is a travesty. There's not a lot left in Dan's deck.
The question here is, of course, does he have a Forcible? And he does, along with a blue card in Brainstorm. That is big.
That is huge. He's not beating this Imperial Recruiter.
Does Ian have a blast?
I mean, this seems like a no doubt about it blast back. What else is going to happen with this card?
Yeah, well, yeah, Dan, that's not resolving. And so now we can take care of that. And Dan should be able to take care of business with the attack here. You do 8 times 2 is 16, plus 1 is 17. That's convenient.
Yeah, it is exactly lethal, assuming Ian has nothing going on over there.
Here we go. Yep, I think Dan says, I'm going to do this, and one at a time we go. 3, it's like a time bomb. 2, 1.
All right, 17, okay.
Yep, that's going to do it. Dan Jordan going to win game number 2 over Ian Carle. We're headed to a 3rd game between these 2 players.
Now, I like the Fire Bolts. The Pyrite Spell Bomb is cool. If I was playing against Delver with Stoneforge Mystic and Jite and all that kind of stuff, I want to have some sudden shocks in my sideboard.
Oh, come on. Come on.
I want to get some sudden shocks.
You want to do it with a little flash?
Yeah.
A little spice? You know what? I'm behind it now.
Yeah.
It wasn't a tough sell. Sudden shock is, boy, the stories.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the stories.
It's the only card that ever it made it so it was impossible for me not to slow roll people. It was so funny
Yeah.
and such a lock that there was no way to help it.
Yep. The best is when someone loses to a will bender with that. That's one of my favorites. But by and large, yeah, the sudden shock slow roll. I also like that it's sudden shock slow roll.
Yeah.
Just like something very fast doing it very slow.
Well, one of the two parties, being me, is the operative party. I'm doing something very slowly.
Yep.
But when the sudden shock is finally deployed, it is very fast.
Yes, it is. I feel like everyone wanted to take the sudden shock challenge, but no one had the heart.
What's the sudden shock challenge?
Just wait until the longest amount of time possible.
I did have a match at a Grand Prix where my opponent Vendilion clicked me, saw some sudden shocks, game's going on, et cetera, et cetera. He doesn't take either of the sudden shocks, so they're just there the whole game.
Okay.
Gets down to 4, and I pass with the 2 sudden shocks and 4 mana.
Okay.
And he looks at me, looks down at his life pad, looks up at me, down back into his notes, back and forth, trying to figure out if they're still there and if what's going on is really happening. And he eventually just concedes before receiving priority.
You are a monster.
Nothing was said.
You are a monster.
No words exchanged between myself and my opponent, but he did eventually figure out what was happening and just quietly packed it in.
I enjoy the awkward eye contact.
Oh yeah, no, because he has to be sure, because am I just conceding when the game's still going on?
Yep.
Or is this person trying to slow roll me with 2 sudden shocks? And do I not give him the satisfaction of being able to slow roll me for however many turns?
Yeah. I would just pick it up. I would not give you any satisfaction. I'm dead. That's cool. You win. You do win the game.
Please make sure.
Good old sudden shot.
Because you have to be certain that your notes are correct and that you're playing against the type of person who would slow roll you with 2 sudden shocks.
Yep, that is certainly
hard,
you.
It's hard to be sure. You
Yep.
know, you never know for sure.
He wouldn't do that, would he? He would just kill me.
Did I click one of those things? Is there only one in his hand? I can't really remember.
Yep. You're a monster. But now, yeah, we need to get these firebolts out of the deck and sudden shocks in.
Sudden shocks in.
Yeah, this is easy. Let's get those in there. Are those sudden effects, do we think those are good design?
I think that it's really rough when you have a block full of them, because it really warps the way that you have to play games in this non-intuitive way. That said, if you were playing just random games of pickup Magic, and one game out of 1,000 someone played a random split-second card, I think it would actually be kind of fun and enjoyable if it came up. But I think as a block-wide mechanic, it's pretty rough. Because you regularly have the experience of, oh, I just died to Stonewood Invocation, I had a kill spell in my hand, and I'm just not, I've been trained to play Magic one way for 15 years, and now this is happening.
Oh, man, that card was awesome. That card was so awesome.
But split second, unexpected, in really small doses is a ton of fun. So that's where I stand on it.
Word of Seizing.
Yeah.
There were some nice split second cards. There really were. I know that Sam Black was a big fan of sudden spoiling in his Elves deck.
The fact that it appeared in the same block with morphs with triggers is not ideal.
Yeah.
You can't respond to these things except this weird class of cards that you have to know a really specific rule of that appear at common.
That was quietly, 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to even believe.
Yeah. Ian going to start off here with an Arid Mesa. We'll see what land he wants to search up. I imagine it's a mountain, and again, playing around Stifle, which is exactly what he does. And the Arid Mesa doesn't want him to join. Okay, it's going to stay. Looks like he wanted to leave for a minute.
You're always breathing a sigh of relief when you're playing a deck like Blue Rider Delver on the draw against something like Painter, because their best hands, it doesn't even matter if you have Force of Will. The game could just be over.
Yep. They can Blood Moon you with backup on turn 1.
It's one of those things. I don't care what you say your matchup is against Sneak and Show. There's going to be some draws you're just not beating.
Yeah. Dan going to sacrifice his blue to Delta for a Tundra. And we'll see what his first turn is going to be. See if it's maybe a Delver, Brainstorm, Ponder. Ponder it is. No blast here. That's good to go.
Interesting to see how Ian wants to blast certain things and not blast others, assuming that he even has one in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his use of blast last game. Just super aggressive with it. I was a fan.
Yeah.
You don't want to give your opponent the opportunity to brainstorm any of that nonsense, so I was actually a big fan of that. Just didn't work out for him.
Although early on in the game, when it's the end of the turn and they don't have a shuffler in play, it's a little bit different.
Taxian Pro, let me see what you're working with. We got a blast, 2 blasts. Looks like an Imperial Recruiter ×2, a City of Traders, and an Arid Mesa.
So
I've seen better.
This hand's not great. It does have a lot of protection for Ian. It's the type of hand where he can go Imperial Recruiter and go get Magus of the Moon, but as we established earlier, that's not the best route against Dan because he has Lightning Bolts in his deck.
And you have to imagine Bolt still after board. Even though Dan hasn't seen Magus of the Moon, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't in his deck after board.
Between Magus of the Moon and Painter's Servant, I can't imagine ever cutting Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. It would be a shock to the system. Jordan gonna draw a card here. Pass the turn back, does have a Daze at the ready. Carle, looks like you may have picked up a copy of Ensnaring Bridge.
Another dimension of attack here. And a card that Dan does not have a lot of ways to answer in the event that it resolves.
Here's an Arid Mesa, you ain't gonna sacrifice this right away. I imagine to get a mountain again to play around Stifle before passing the turn back, and that's exactly what it is. See, there's some comfort here from Ian as far as how to play this matchup, what he's trying to accomplish. He's certainly in a good matchup. See if he can convert it into a win.
Big implications for the entire top 8 here, as the winner is likely to be on the play.
Yep.
For the entire elimination rounds.
It's a Stoneforge Mystic. It gets the thumbs up, so it does resolve. Umezawa Shite is the card that Dan's going to get, as it is castable underneath the Blood Moon, which I believe is very important. And there's the City of Traders. Let's see if Carle wants to cast one of the 3-mana spells in his hand. The answer is yes. Imperial Recruiter will go onto the stack. That'll resolve, and let's see what Ian wants to search up.
I would suspect that he's getting his Manic Vandal in this spot. Can't really get Magus of the Moon in the face of a Jitte that's about to become active. Or if he has a hand that's rolled up here, he can go get Painter's Servant, but it looks like it's going to be Manic Vandal.
Mm-hmm. The answer. If only he could have found it last game. Jordan will add a card to his hand here. You know, we already know about the Umezawa Shite over there. There's also a Daze hanging out. You see a Scalding Tarn too. Also has a Lightning Bolt. And this looks like it might be a Grim Lava Mancer. Lava Mancer's quite good in this matchup.
It is another threat card, which Dan's always in the market for more of post-board. And can also, it's another card that can beat Magus of the Moon, even if it resolves in the same way that Lightning Bolt can.
Mm-hmm. There is the Grim. Jordan will pass the turn back. He's sitting pretty right now, all things being honest.
And now Ian kind of has to sit here and wait for his hand to improve. And Red-White Painter does get in the spot a fair bit.
Yeah, and this is, you know, part of the things, one of the things I dislike about the deck. Now, of course, it can't be a perfect deck because it would just be the best deck, but, you know, you do get yourself in situations here where you are playing draw go against a deck that does have Brainstorm and Ponder and friends to be able to actually find the cards it's looking for. And Ian doesn't really have much manipulation outside of Sensei's Divining Top and a couple fetch lands.
Yeah, not a lot of ways to shuffle the deck.
Yeah. Ensnaring Bridge. You saw the Lotus Petal before that to try to play around Spell Pierce and or Daze.
And remember, Dan, if Ian is able to get empty-handed, has only one way to break this card. He has a single Wear Tear in his sideboard.
prefer that in Snaring Bridge art to the old one.
The white border bridge just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Well, that's the problem, of course, is the white border. But if it was black border, like the foil version of that, it's pretty good.
Especially contrasted with Dan's, all foil uranium deck here. The white bordered Ensnaring Bridge does stand out.
And Arid Mesa comes down after the City of Traders, forcing Ian to sacrifice that. Jordan will move forward by sacrificing the Scalding Tarn. And we'll see the equipment come into play here in just a moment, I imagine, is the case.
Ian's hand is surprisingly cumbersome, which is making it a little rough for him to get it empty to facilitate his bridge here. A lot of 3-mana spells. Imperial Recruiter, search for other things. He's got Red Blast that are stranded right now.
Yeah, I've seen better draws. The question, of course, is in this matchup, do you mulligan aggressively for Blood Moons, especially when you're on the play? There's the Jite. Carle going to sacrifice the fetch land right away, yet again, to play around Stifle. Time to suit it up. Maybe yes, maybe no. The answer is yes. Let's go, Stoneforge, shall we? See if Carle has any interest in blocking or if he can work his way out of this.
Feels like it's probably worth taking the first shot.
I think the scarier card here, even though GT is quite good, is actually the Grim Lavamancer. Keeps a lot of things in check.
It is. Does a very good job of suppressing a lot of things that Ian is up to. Dan also with a couple bolts in his hand too, so he has a lot of protection, definitely against the Painter Servant route of this deck. Magus of the Moon is not an issue.
Yeah, that problem is very much solved. Looks like Dan's draw is lining up quite nicely for him here.
And if Ian plays this Manic Vandal and it doesn't resolve, it's all sorts of trouble.
Well, the Vandal is on the stack. Jordan with a Daze. Would you like to blow that pedal? Yes, you would. That's fine. Take care of the Jite. And that'll take care of the Vandal. Might be the best use of the Daze that Jordan can find.
Getting to trade 1-for-1 is not bad there.
I think part of the reason you saw him do that is to put put cards in the graveyard. Just more fuel for the Lavamancer.
And it's just a good spot.
Yeah.
Get to trade your days that maybe is getting worse in for a pedal in that spot when Ian's a little tied up on mana.
Jordan gonna cast a Ponder now. 2 and 3. See if he likes what he finds. Looks at a Force of Will among other cards here. Leaves it on top very quickly. And that is a Volk. This is an attacker for 1. Ian gonna go down to 13, it looks like.
The problem here is Dan, with his clock being this low, is still at risk of getting locked out by Blood Moon.
Oh, it's very real.
Not out of the woods yet. Magus doesn't matter, and Ian's not in a position to combo out for a very long time, given the amount of defense that Dan has. But if Blood Moon comes down, we could just see a very easy Blood Moon and Snaring Bridge lock.
Aha!
Mm-hmm.
Firebolt. It's actually a problem.
It's a good spot to have it.
Yeah, it really is.
You know it would be better, though. Sudden shock.
Yeah. Wouldn't take 2.
Yeah, it wouldn't take 2.
And that's just good deck building.
That is... Listen, I have a lot of wisdom to give.
Yeah.
Eventually, I'll have the time for the books on tape. And
I can't wait to listen.
yeah.
I'll be a part of the Kickstarter. I will give you, is there a reward for $1 on your Kickstarter?
My appreciation, but only public-facing. Privately, I'll resent you.
Okay.
For $2, you can get earnest appreciation.
$1's good with me.
$1 good enough.
Yeah. Got what I came for. So Firebolt does take care of the Lavamancer. Ian is going to go down to 11. And then the mighty Imperial Recruiter does get into the red zone here.
Some pretty anemic beatdowns from both sides here.
Anemic is one word you can use. Pathetic is another.
Pathetic.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, the creatures that Dan had, very high in quality.
Certainly
it just
true.
kind of hasn't gone the right way.
Oh, yeah. One more. Ian going to go down to 10.
Another reminder for players making top lane today.
Jordan just pass it back. Now, we know Dan has at least one bolt. I think there are 2.
Before we start top lane.
Ian may be in more trouble than he suspects.
Oh, yeah. And Ian just sacrificed the fetch land. It's going to go down to 9 now. It's not inconceivable that Jordan just fires off 3 bolts to get the job done here. That play is certainly in play.
Most people commonly play around 1 bolt. Sometimes if they have the luxury to do so, they'll play around 2. No one ever plays around 3.
No. Nope. It's not a thing that happens. And that may allow Jordan to take him off guard. There's a recruiter. Here's a brainstorm from Dan. So 1, 2, and 3.
This recruiter important because it potentially allows Ian to have 2 1-1s that can then double block a 1-2. That's a big swing.
Given how this game is going, yes, it is. Yeah. Jordan going to put a couple cards back here. See if recruiter does resolve. There's the swords over there. Looks like it will resolve. So Carle will go hunting. We'll see which one of his bullets he does want to go grab.
Looks like he's moving a Painter Servant to the front.
Yep. I choose this one. Uh-oh. Oh, boy.
Someone might be in range.
It's a pretty quick untap. Yep, there's a polluted Delta.
Dan's got some forces, too, in the unlikely event that Ian can break this up. Not confirmed yet whether or not he has a second bolt, but...
Yeah. That was a confident lightning bolt at the end of turn. Just right on the nug.
Lightning bolt with intent.
The best kind. It's a brainstorm. 1, 2, and 3.
It looks like Dan has found both Force of Will and Wear Tear. And 2 cards that give him even further protection.
Yep. This game has just gone great for Dan. Really has.
He kind of has an edge both in the offensive and defensive element of the game. He's closer to winning the game and has more protection in the case that Ian is able to get some momentum here.
Looks like Dan's going to deploy a Stoneforge Mystic now. And that's what he will do. See if he's got any equipment to search up or if it's just going to be for a shuffle. All right, there's Batter Skull. So basically what this means is that Dan is putting a higher priority on Umezawa's Jite in this matchup as he searched for that first this game and the previous game.
Makes a lot of sense. He can break up some of what Ian does with an active Jite, and Ian does have Ensnaring Bridge, which makes Batter Skull a lot worse.
Carle draws his card. We'll see what he's able to do moving forward. And we know about the Painter Servant. That's the big one here. So here's this. Will Jordan fight over it? Does he even care?
A lot of reactive cards that can handle this.
The end of round 9.
And he did name blue this time. No green this go around. But that just means that Ian has some blast in his hand. And he's got some things he either wants to kill or counter. Jordan's going to pass the turn back. So Carle will untap those 2 mountains. 4 lands in play, only mountains right now. No double lands, none of the soul lands that this deck plays so many of. There's Narid Mesa. Only 4 mountains in the deck, so there are 2 plateaus to search up.
And now the flashback of Firebolt is online.
Well, it's about time. 3 mana. What do we have here? Another recruiter, it looks like. That's going to result. Time to go digging.
Is it Jaya Ballard time?
Oh, boy. Looks like it might be Phyrexian Revoker. Dan wants how many cards over there? The answer is 3 for Ian. He'll be adding a 4th one here momentarily. There are some juicy targets. Jaya Ballard among them. The old Welder's not so bad. Dan will take a look at the graveyard here. Make sure he knows exactly what's going on.
Now, I wonder if this Welder that Ian's getting is to try to set up a grindstone kill with some protection and insurance.
Things can get unique from here on out. And Ian wants to take a look at Dan's graveyard now. You know, all things considered, a pretty intense game 3.
Yeah, and both players, you can tell, they are definitely showing a lot of respect for the other's ability to kill them out of nowhere here.
That's the big one.
And Ian, I'm not sure if he senses how close to death he is. The bolt from Dan would make very little sense if there was no second bolt.
Ian goes down to 5 now. Dan trying to get 2 more points of damage through. Somehow, some way. He's got another bolt in his hand. Welder's in. Only one red, mana available for Carle. Force of Will will be cast, I believe, on the Welder. Yep, that's gone. Jordan gonna activate, put in Batterskull.
Now that Batterskull currently not able to do anything because of the Ensnaring Bridge in play.
Yep. Wear Tear. Get this thing out of here. Wants to get the bridge off the table. A Red Blast says no. We're gonna have a fight over this.
Yeah, it looks like Dan's gonna try to plow the Painter's Servant here. That's gonna make the Pyroblast unable to counter the Wear Tear.
Yep. It's a good play there by Dan. Now you get to get in the red zone. You could, yeah, get it. Oh boy. Everybody!
There is that bolt still hanging out.
I wonder if the best blocks here are for Ian. You know, chump block 1, double block a Stoneforge probably. Yeah. You lose 2 creatures, you take care of 1 of Dan's. Your blocks probably aren't much better than that.
The only other option he really has is just chump blocking the Batterskull and taking 2 to try and preserve as many chump blockers as possible. But this gets very ugly for Dan if Ian has another copy of Ensnaring Bridge. The Wear Tear is gone.
Here's your Revoker. We will find out what this is naming in just a moment. But Dan's going to quickly untap here. Coming in, are we? Carle can't go. I mean, we know he can't go to 3. I think he knows that too.
Again, the bolt from Dan several turns ago just has to throw off. I mean, your radar has to be going at that point. Why would this guy just bolt me down to 6?
Yeah, for funsies. Stoneforge did come in. Here's, okay, a bridge. That's annoying. Stoneforge Mystic can keep beating down, but Batterskull cannot.
And only for the time being. If Ian can get his hand empty, then Dan has to find a second bolt to be able to do anything. Or hope that Ian draws something he can't cast.
Yep. And for one, yeah, Dan could get a little creative, play a Delver. Don't flip it. Don't check. That's an angle. Another Stoneforge Mystic. That's another angle.
You can just hope that Ian can't get his hand empty.
Yeah.
And the Stone Forges are good to go.
1 mana. Grindstone. Pass the turn back. Carle. Over to Jordan. Jordan, not ready to attack just yet. Does play a Wasteland first. Here's an attack. Carle gonna go down to 2. Pass the turn back. I like this play from Dan. No reason to bolt just yet. He's got to beat what's on the board.
Yeah, just allow Ian to do things first. He has to keep his hand, he has to get his hand empty to survive next turn.
Yep.
And if he empties out his hand, then you bolt in response. But
Yeah.
don't play into some weird counter or something some random card from antiquities you don't know about. Just attack him and try to win the game this way.
Ancient Tune comes down here for Carle. Jordan draws, attacks for 2. And that's an extension of the hand. Dan Jordan going to win this match over Ian Carle. Overcoming a very poor matchup is Jordan, able to make the elimination rounds. Moves on to 8-1, and very realistic chance that he is the #1 overall seed in our top 8.
Ian never really had one of his busted openings.
No.
Dan was able to get into the first turn without the game being over, and his draws were very good. A lot of disruption, a lot of counters, some good pressure. Had the right mix of everything.
Yeah.